Welcome, everyone, to our Qyral educational series. I'm Honey Sagari, founder and CEO of Qyral. Today, we're once again honored to host Dr. Jacqueline Leone, and I had the privilege of spending the last hour with her. You are amazing, Dr. Leone. Welcome back. For those of you who might have missed our last conversation, allow me to introduce this remarkable physician. Dr. Leone has a unique blend of expertise, holding a bachelor's in psychology and a doctorate in naturopathic medicine, complemented by a board certification in holistic nutrition. Beyond her clinical practice, Dr. Leone enlightens minds as an educator. I know you enlighten mine. Contributes through research, pens articles for renowned health platforms, and is a sought-after public speaker. Her focus areas span chronic illness, gastrointestinal dysregulation, metabolic syndromes, inflammatory conditions, and mental health. Tonight, prepare to be enlightened by her depth of knowledge and passion for holistic health. Let's give a warm welcome back to Dr. Jacqueline Leone. Welcome back, Dr. Leone.
Thank you so much for having me back. It was so fun last time, and I'm really excited to jump in and have some fun tonight.
Yeah, well, we really enjoyed you. And for those of you who missed your last talk, why don't you start by just introducing yourself? Tell us how you became a naturopathic doctor and your passion. Talk to us about your journey.
Oh, thank you for asking. So without being redundant for anyone who was present for the last presentation on Semaglutide and just those treatments alone, I hope this isn't too redundant, but I'll give you kind of the Cliff's Notes this time, but essentially just a traumatized, anxious, depressed, sour stomach, weird period kind of teen, young adult, confused, not sure what to do. In school for my undergrad, just because that's like what you do after high school, right? And I kind of took a little break from school because I was suffering so much daily panic attacks. Everything I ate was bloating me. I was breaking out all the time. I would sleep 18 hours a day. I had no idea what was going on. You know, I'm 19, 20, really confused. And in the time I took off, I very serendipitously got a front desk job at an alternative healthcare center. And I worked with multiple doctors, and it was the first, this is back in like 02, 03, before anybody really knew about naturopathic medicine or just about holistic health in general, right? I think I used this joke last time, but it's like, I think a lot of people just think we're fancy Harry Potters, right? We just make potions and wave wands or something. And so it was really great to see close up these people coming in weekly or monthly or whatever, and having significant impactful changes on their health and well-being. And I was really curious, and I thought, I need to know more. And so because I was only part-time, in lieu of like benefits package, they just offered me, hey, you want some weekly treatments? So we did the mind body thing, acupuncture, soft tissue alignment, trauma release, dietary changes. I did multiple sugar cleanses in the year and a half I worked there, and realized I was addicted to sugar and like what that was doing to my body, and learning about foods and supplements and minerals and hormones and why things are affected the way they are. And I had zero idea that what I ate affected my physical and mental experiences, which I don't think a lot of people know, right? So anyhow, my entire life has changed, and I had to do this. It was just, there was no question. So fast forward a few years, I finished my degree, start naturopathic medical school, and the rest is history. So I think just seeing it help other people, and then it profoundly impacting my life, I felt like I had to share it. Like, people are suffering without knowing. The isolation, the loneliness, the self-criticism, the confusion of information. Maybe they have a desire to change, or willingness, but they just don't know how or what. So I guess I felt so compelled to know that you don't have to live in that suffering. And that's how I found alternative medicine and why I do what I do today. And I absolutely love it. So thanks for asking.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing with us again. Thank you. Thank you. If we can sort of jump in, tonight's conversation is, but we're going to talk to us a little about peptides, if you don't mind. What are they? We're hearing it it's a term that's thrown out. People talk about it. So let's jump in and talk about peptides. If you could break it down for us and demystify.
Absolutely. Yes. And I love that you asked this question. So peptides are related to proteins and amino acids. So our body, to be able to build stuff, just like you need bricks to build a wall or a house, right? You need individual bricks to build something massive. Our body requires the same. So amino acids, peptides, and proteins are really like the building blocks of the body. And they build things. They build hormones, they build enzymes, they build muscle tissue, skin tissue. They're all three related: amino acids, peptides, and proteins. Okay. So those bricks to create the wall, think of the bricks as the amino acids, the wall as the peptides, and the house as the proteins. So you, in nature, for whatever reason, we can't, unless you're taking a supplement, obviously, just go buy peptides off the shelf or go buy amino acids off the shelf. Again, unless it's a product that's been broken down. It doesn't happen in nature. What does happen in nature is complex proteins. And that's in the form of plant and animal food, byproducts of animals like dairy and things like that. They all have protein in them. So our digestive system is really awesome at taking these big, complex things. The way I like to describe it to my biochemistry students is I think of really ornate jewelry with 30 different kinds of beads and like those necklaces you wrap around yourself 3 or 4 times, and they're just beautiful, big statement pieces, right? That's a protein. And then your body has this innate ability through digestion to break that up into simpler, maybe just a bracelet, maybe just a pair of earrings, maybe just an anklet, right? It's not this big ornate collection. It's these smaller pieces, right? And that's peptides. And then the body takes it a step further in digestion and breaks it down to the individual beads, the individual gems. Those are the amino acids. And so the cool thing about the body is once we get all those like beads and gems separated out, our body can kind of decide what it needs to do. It needs these 3 blue ones, 2 purple ones, and a pink one. And we're going to make this neurotransmitter to help you sleep or feel calm. We're going to pull that out and we're going to make the peptide that's going to help your hair stay shiny and your skin stay youthful looking. You know, so you can take your collection of loose beads, if you will, amino acids, and you can build simple peptides in the form of different forms of jewelry, or you can build really complex proteins when the body needs it. So we eat the protein, our body breaks it up into smaller parts, into even smallest parts, and then our body rebuilds it based on what we need. So you eat a turkey sandwich and your body can break that all up, peptides, amino acids, give it what it needs. And it's going to take that turkey and turn it into melatonin so you sleep tonight, right? Because the amino acids in the turkey are required after they go through their peptide and through their amino acid breakdown, they're required to build serotonin and melatonin, which is our mood stabilizing hormone and our sleep hormone, just as an example. So in terms of the world of biochemistry, you eat the big fancy jewelry and your body breaks it down as needed. Does it just need some beads to do some stuff? Does it need to reconfigure some beads and make new jewelry? Or can it just stop at the smaller jewelry and then go from there? So when we're looking at the peptides, that middle ground, it's not a single amino acid and it's not this big ornate thing. It's somewhere in the middle. Peptides can be as small as 2 amino acids or as big as 50 amino acids. So just like you wouldn't wear black tie jewelry to the grocery store, maybe you would, but you know, my point is there's jewelry for each event or circumstance or scenario. Different peptides are intended for different activities as well. And there's a handful of things that peptides do really well. You know, some of them are around hair, skin, and nail, like I talked about, wound healing. It can change the pigmentation of the skin, making it darker or lighter. So that's working on the outside, making hair better. If you've ever taken collagen peptides in your morning coffee or in your smoothie, you know, that's the whole reason. Hair, skin, nails, stuff like that. Also collagen for joints and connective tissue between organs. because we need connective tissue to hold the organs together, to make sure that the joints stay supple. All of those things require peptides. In addition to that, they're signaling molecules. So the bonding hormone oxytocin. After women give birth, they're flooded with oxytocin to bond to their children. After people are intimate, both release oxytocin, women higher than men, but both do, to bond to each other. It's why we, our family, our friends, the people that we connect to, when you hug longer than, I believe it's 10 to 15 seconds, your body naturally releases a small amount of the peptide oxytocin. And so that is a chemical messenger that's creating that bonding sensation and building our community, right? So peptides function on a lot of levels. So there are neuropeptides that help our brain function, like that oxytocin, right? They help us think faster, clearer. They kind of double as hormones. So they help us sleep or help us bond or help us LH and FSH, for example. So, which are hormones during a woman's cycle that help her ovulate. So these are all triggered by peptides. So peptides kind of conduct a lot of processes in the body, and they can help catalyze and they can help slow down. So if you want to catalyze something you like strong hair, skin, nails, cartilage and all that stuff, you want to take certain peptides. If you want to slow things down or change things, like minimize your appetite, semaglutide is a peptide. And so, there are different groups based on their complexity, the amino acids or the beads that make up those pieces of jewelry, if you will. And so when it comes to peptides, they're highly active in the body. They can work, like I said, brain, metabolism. I'm trying to run through the list. Anti-aging, making your mitochondria. I feel like everybody knows the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, but what the heck does that even mean? We walk away with that in 9th grade biology, but nobody knows what exactly that means. And what that means is inside every cell, we have this little bean-shaped thing called a mitochondria. And that's kind of the engine of the cell. It's what gives us energy. And as we age, it slows, or if we don't give it what it needs, which is B vitamins primarily and other things to keep the engine running in that little powerhouse, we get fatigued, we age faster. We not just physical aging, which I think when people think of aging, they think of sunspots and wrinkles. But I'm talking about all over. Joints not working as well, your wounds not healing as fast, dementia, your mind going, your muscle spasms, organs not working as well. Aging isn't just on the surface, right? And so there's a whole group of peptides that are focused on mitochondrial support and protecting that part of the cell so that we can maintain energy production and we can have all of our cells working at the best capacity possible to basically do all of our biological functions. And so, there are peptides that do that and work on the anti-aging longevity piece in different ways. There are also groups of peptides which prevent muscle wasting, which I think is really important for this group, because I'm sure you all know that as a side effect of semaglutide, when people drop weight really fast, their body comp changes. And yeah, they are 3 sizes smaller, but now their body comp is more fat than muscle, right? And that's because your body constantly needs an amino acid pool to survive, to make your hormones, to keep you protected, to keep your metabolism working, to keep, your brain, your heart, all of these functions in your body require peptides and amino acids and proteins. And so if you're not eating it because your appetite's lower, where's your body going to get it? From your muscle. And that's why we see about 1/3 of people who drop weight really quickly have muscle atrophy. And so there are certain peptides that you can take that will either slow or stop that process, and your muscles won't atrophy as fast. And so you're able to maintain a little bit more of your body composition and your muscle mass. And so even though you've lost weight, maybe you're like, oh, but now I have cellulite, or I feel flabby or loose, or, I don't feel tight and toned. That's again, that loss. So there are peptides, 2 or 3 that are really popular right now. I'm sure there are more because there are thousands of peptides, but there are 2 or 3 that are really highly studied right now that protect from that muscle wasting. So peptides in and of themselves have a lot of different roles in the body, but at the end of the day, they're the intermediary between complex proteins basic amino acids. They're the middleman, and they do a bunch of stuff, right? Proteins make muscles, they make stuff. Amino acids are the basic ingredients to make other stuff. Peptides are like, they're kind of made, but they make stuff happen, if that makes sense. So amino acids are like the building blocks, but the peptides play out actions, right? They create things, they turn things on, turn things off. They're kind of like the composers of certain biological processes. And that's what makes them so important. They're also, because we make them endogenously, which means our body naturally makes them already, more, or at this point in research, knock on wood, can't say long term, talk to me in 20 more years, but they're very safe because they're derived from things our body are already familiar with, which are proteins and amino acids. And so it's not like we're taking a completely synthetic thing, and some peptides are synthetic, but most are bioavailable or bioidentical to our own. And we take them in, the body recognizes them, and it can efficiently use them with little to no side effect in a lot of people, depending on the peptide, obviously. But compared to like synthetic drugs, which we've all seen those commercials, right? It's like, yeah, your headache will go away, but you might have bloody diarrhea and death. And so it's like the trade-off isn't really, it doesn't make sense, where peptides are so much safer, right? Because they are bioavailable and the body does recognize them. So I have a greater peace of mind utilizing peptides than I do medications. But again, this is every tool for every job. And so peptides are so helpful because of what they do. They're safe, they're effective, they can be used on and off long term. And that's really the benefit and the highlights of peptides and how they work.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned there are thousands of peptides. I think only 10 to 20, I'm not exactly sure of the number, are FDA approved and prescribed. Other types of peptides, you would have to go to a compounding pharmacy to obtain it. So why is it that physicians, more and more physicians, if peptides are so effective, they actually work with your body's natural processes, how come more and more physicians don't utilize peptides? I mean, we're now hearing about semaglutide and tirzepatide, but there's so many other peptides out there that no one's ever heard of. They're effective. How come more and more physicians don't utilize peptides in their therapy?
I think it's just lack of awareness, right? It's like, if you don't know how to use a tool, you're not going to tote the tool. You're not going to, if you, I think it's just ignorance. And I don't mean that ignorance like stupidity. I mean, it's just like, you just don't know what you don't know at the end of the day. And because they don't, in my experience, when I compare traditional medical school to NMD medical school, we have, I believe it's 6 or 7 more times nutrition and biochemistry type courses. And so our background really is in more functional medicine and utilizing your biochemistry to the best of its ability. Where MDs and DOs, they get some of that for sure, but their focus really is about putting out the fires and symptom management with medications, or just cut it out with surgery, which are great tools for the job, but it's just lack of awareness. And if they don't know how to utilize them, or if they work, they're not going to use them. Now, I will say that I feel like there's a subset of, traditional physicians, conventional physicians, who do go out of their way to learn about functional medicine, take those extra courses, do all of that work, so that they can, work to incorporate these things. But also peptides, we have to remember, aren't, in my experience, covered by insurance. And so a lot of people have resistance, right? So if the doctor doesn't know how to utilize them, and their patient is like, well, if insurance doesn't cover it, I'm not going to pay for it, why would they even take the time to investigate it, even if it did work, right? It's a business model at that point. They want to give the patient what they want, what they can afford. So I think it really is a two-sided coin, to the physician just being unaware and the general population still having that anchor of insurance to healthcare, which I think in some cases can really be helpful, but sometimes it can really get us into a sticky situation, because sometimes the best solution for long-term care and to get people off of polypharmacy, which is 10 or 12 drugs some people are on sometimes, it requires paying out of pocket. It requires extra effort on the client, customer / patient route, where they have to take accountability for some of the stuff, right, that they've created within their body, their eating habits, their lifestyle, their lack of emotional awareness, their lack of stress management, lack of sleep, lack of nutrition, dehydrate, like all of these things, right? Maladaptive coping, smoking, drinking, addiction of any sort, from food to sex to shopping to whatever. So it's a dual-edged sword in those cases. I think it requires re-educating the conventional physician to understand that there are more than just medications. And it's also about educating the public as a whole to think outside the insurance model for healthcare. The insurance model to me is more like sick management, sick care. But when you look at healthcare, like what you're doing, taking initiative in the longevity space, in preventing long-term disease, like you're helping people with semaglutide and peptides like that, not just lose weight, but we're reversing type 2 diabetes and pre-diabetes in a lot of people in these cases, right? So we're working on healthcare, actual healthcare, in my professional opinion. And again, it's not about one is better than the other. It's different tools for the job kind of thing. And so when we're talking about what we're doing, I feel like that those are the two biggest areas of resistance.
Oh, I love that. I love that you're touching on that. And so you've clearly worked with some peptides before. And can you give us some examples? You touched on oxytocin, but just give us some specific examples. And there's thousands of them. So just a couple.
There's so many.
I know. Your favorite ones, the ones in your toolbox that you used. Maybe you could touch on MOTS, for example, or the CJC 12.
Yes.
Maybe just touch on a couple of those names and explain, just so people have some sort of reference in their mind of what it is and what, maybe let's start with oxytocin, because you can take oxytocin. It's a peptide and you can take it, correct? So maybe you could start there and then give us other examples.
Well, oxytocin can sometimes be treatment for different things related to like reproduction. It can help with letdown with milk and lactation. Now, obviously that has to be like under a microscope, because in most cases, peptides are contraindicated for pregnant and breastfeeding women. But in some cases like oxytocin, it can be very medicinal in helping let down of breast milk. And so that's why women, like if you've ever out there listening, heard your baby cry or a baby cry within the first few months of giving birth, your breasts produce milk and you might leak, right? That's because when you hear that baby cry, your oxytocin creates letdown. So if you can't create letdown, if you do have issues with breastfeeding or production, oxytocin can sometimes help with that. I've never utilized that in practice, but I do have OBGYN friends or people who focus on women's health and, pregnancy and fertility and all that stuff that utilize the hormone type peptides. So in terms of peptides for me, I really, because way before naturopathic medical school and everything, I have always been an athlete and I love exercise. I love movement. I was in, almost every kind of sport, dance, martial arts, you name it. I love yoga. I love all the things. But if you push yourself too hard, recovery can be really difficult. So the way I started peptides were really like joint management, helping the internal bounce back of the body, because I was one of those who would work out and get that delayed onset muscle soreness. And then, I wouldn't work out for 4 days and then you fall off the wagon. And then it's like 4 months later as I got older. And so working with, athletes to utilize peptides that help with things that protect the joints, protect the internal world, I guess, synovial fluid, your sinews or connective tissue like tendons, ligaments, the bounce back of your muscles, your muscle hypertrophy and growth, right? Like there are some peptides, like we talked about earlier, CJC 1295 is the number, right? So that peptide is really used to, and it's used in combination with a couple other things. And I don't want to throw a ton of sciencey words because we can just read that on a list at some point. But the CJC and all that stuff is working to help with enhanced recovery. It helps metabolism, where your body's utilizing calories more efficiently and taking those complex proteins and breaking them down into their little pieces and building them back up to what they need as fast as you are demanding it. right? Versus a sluggishness to that process, which is why you're sore for days, or it takes 6 weeks to heal from, when you tweaked your knee walking down that step or something like that. So, or if you're just working out constantly and you really are, you're an athlete, a triathlete, you're trying something new, and there's a barrier to that ache and pain, that bounce back, that recovery. CJC is really great for that. It's also highly associated to growth hormone. And so we kind of mentioned earlier about the muscle wasting with people who lose a lot of weight fast, right? So this is a great peptide when taken in conjunction or closely after, where you can protect that part of the body from utilizing the muscle for amino acids, and you can increase growth hormone. And so muscle hypertrophy, which means like your muscles grow, you become stronger faster. Again, the recovery, your body's ability to build that muscle is faster than it would have been otherwise. So I really like that one for those reasons. It's also great at, believe it or not, again, anti-aging, but from an internal state, right? So again, I think we think of aging as like more external, but it's internal as well. And so we really need to address both, in my professional opinion. Another one that stimulates growth hormone is Semorlin. And Semorlin is really similar to the CJC. But it stimulates the release of growth hormone for fat loss, muscle gain. So they're more like, if you love the gym, if you're an athlete and you're interested in like getting strength, Semorlin could be better. Where if you're interested in recovery, bounce back, energized, also muscle enhancement, but not as much, than the CJC. Is it ipamorelin or ipamorelin?
I think it's IPO. Yeah.
I say ipamorelin, but yeah, so those work together to do that. So let's see. I have like a laundry list here in my notes, and I want to talk about all of them.
There's thousands.
I'm going to cherry pick. Okay. So those two work really well for those reasons. So I think that that's a great segue to consider for like you and the consultants and stuff to after semaglutide. If people are concerned about their body composition, those could be some pretty good peptides to use as they're getting more acquainted with their new body. They're maybe getting back to the gym, working out again, doing, body weight exercises and things like that. So the next one I want to talk about is the MOTS-C, and that's that mitochondria thing. So back to the powerhouse of the cell, everyone. We're going back to ninth grade biology. So just cellular energy production is so important and comes from the mitochondria. And so it's relatively new to research, but the most, I want to say 2021 is when I started kind of seeing it be used more readily. And it's all about people. Now, this is a peptide that you're not going to see anything. You're going to feel this peptide, right? So semaglutide, yeah, you feel it because there's side effects or something, but you're going to see the utilization of that peptide in the form of weight loss and body changes. Where MOTS or MOTS-C is, because it's functionally working at a cellular level, you're going to feel it. Less fatigue, more clarity. Your brain, your thought process is faster, memory retention, right? You are able to feel more energized on less sleep. This is really fantastic, this one, because the way that it works isn't on a pathway as much. Like semaglutide works on that insulin pathway and on.
Oh my God, I want this. Where do I get this from?
I know.
Yeah, ASAP.
So yeah, I love that certain peptides work on pathways, but MOTS-C specifically works on mitochondria of every cell in the body. And I love it personally. So if you want to feel great as well as look great, then the MOTS-C is probably the peptide to go to from there. And some people, because of the increased weight loss or the fast weight loss, when you're breaking down that much fat and protein, your body's changing and you're not really getting as many calories because it's an appetite suppressant at the end of the day as well. You're going to have fatigue. You will probably experience lower energy because you're not taking in as much energy in the form of calories, right? So that's a really great potential secondary or complement to semaglutide if people are having those kinds of experiences with their weight loss in the form of like fatigue and stuff like that.
Well, I hear Qyral's next product launch is Motzi. I got to, after tonight's talk, I'm like, we got to get this. Okay. We need this. I mean, brain fog, fatigue, sign me up. I'm all about it. No, this is great information. Thank you for sharing that.
Now, sorry, go ahead.
No. I wanted to ask about contraindications and, the safety profile of these peptides, but go ahead if you could elaborate.
Well, I just wanted to mention two things, which we kind of talked about before. Peptides are fantastic, but they're not really root cause. So if you're taking the MOTS-C and you're noticing an uptick, if you're not making lifestyle changes, like removing the inflammatory stuff, removing the stuff that was causing the mitochondria to slow, or you're not relearning your relationship with food, like how to eat foods that feed the mitochondria and make it work better. It's like if you introduce a tool and then you take the tool away and you revert back to the same, did we really learn anything? Did change really occur, or are we just band-aiding it, right? So MOTS-C is great for the post-semaglutide, like fatigue, weight loss, getting that energy back and things like that. But it's also about really relearning ourselves and really shifting our relationship to food. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. As a naturopath, we work at the root cause, right? We work at really, it's like this analogy I heard in medical school. Let's say the sink is clogged, but the tap is on and the sink is overflowing. Are you going to run into the kitchen with a bucket and a mop and try to just keep up with the overflowing sink and wring it out? How exhausting. Nothing's getting fixed. You're on a hamster wheel. Or are you going to walk over to the sink, turn the tap off, and unclog it? That's curative. That's root cause. And that's what I do. So I love the bucket and the mop. Sometimes we need it to get us out of the woods, but I think both are important. Both are so important because this one gives people hope, right? The bucket and the mop, the symptom management. It's like, oh, I lost the weight. I feel good. I look good. Oh, the MOTS-C, I got more energy to do the stuff I want to do and exercise. And now I feel good and clarity to be able to make better food decisions, right? So those are great tools, but if we're not walking over to the sink and just turning it off and unclogging the clog, then it's just, we're chasing our own tail. But absolutely, before contraindications, I know I'm so long-winded, I'm just so excited. I wanted to talk really quick because I know you love skincare and stuff like that. So there are two skincare: skin regeneration, tissue regeneration, hair, skin, nails, tissue inside the body, outside the body. And those are BPC 157 and GHQ CU. And the CU just means copper. That's like the periodic table shorthand for copper. And those two can work together. They're great peptides for anti-aging on different levels. So the GHK copper works more on the skin part of things. So if you have melasma, if you have dark spots, if you have wrinkles, if you have fine lines, if you have hair thinning, things like that, that one's going to help on the external level. Okay. Which when the skin is working better, it's a better physical barrier. It's the biggest organ we have. So there's absolutely nothing wrong working on that. I mean, because now you're helping an entire organ system and you look better. Win-win. But the second one.
Wait, quickly, real quick. You also told me about one that makes your skin glow and tan. I didn't even know about it.
MK2.
Yeah.
MK2. So I see a lot of like fitness spas, med spas. I heard that about, I don't personally use this one. I will say that caveat, but I do know people who do. And they just, gyms sometimes have it now, fitness centers, stuff like that. So you inject a peptide and it stimulates your melanocytes, and melanocytes make melanin, which give you a tan glow. And so if you don't want sun exposure for, health reasons and risks for skin cancer, you don't want to put chemicals on your skin like a spray tan, this is an option that a lot of people are opting to use. And so, yeah, it stimulates. Now, I will say on the side of that, which we mentioned, is moles, freckles, scars, birthmarks, all that stuff. This is non-discriminatory. It's not just going to say, oh, this is your pale part of your skin. Let's make that tan. These parts are already dark. Let's not mess with that. It's not decisive like that. It's just like every skin cell, the melanin's coming up. So if you got freckles and scars and things, that's going to be more prevalent, as well as, you know, your general glow and tan. And people absolutely love it because again, the side effects are so low compared to something like laying out for 30 minutes a day. Or some people have really bad skin sensitivity to certain products and spray tans, and, you know, tanning beds are so obsolete too. So yeah, that's the one, is MK2 or MT2, because it stands for it sounds like melatonin. It's melatonin. That's what it is. So melatonin 2 does that. That's a peptide that does that. Let's see what else. Okay. And then last but not least is the BPC. I did want to mention that because it reduces inflammation and increases tissue healing. So that's that internal anti-aging. So if you remember, the GHK copper was for like the external aging part. So the BPC is going to be for that internal aging part. It also helps muscle retention, increase fat loss. So that's a good bridge after semaglutide. If people want to maintain their insulin sensitivity, maintain their fat loss, and their muscle gain, then that's a really great peptide that could bridge that gap or be like a stage 2 after the semaglutide weight loss has occurred.
Well, I hear we have a lot of products coming out, so peptide therapy. This is great. Well, thank you for that. Let's shift gears and talk a little about the star of the show, tirzepatide and semaglutide. A lot of people are either currently on it, they're taking it. Let's talk about, if you could share with us how they work, just briefly. I think a lot of people are familiar with it, but for those who have just started using the drug, how does it work? And then I want to get into plateauing a little bit in our weight. We're starting to hear that, or I've lost my weight. Now, what do I do to maintain or keep it off? So can you explain to us a little about how semaglutide, tirzepatide works? Just as a recap.
Absolutely. So tirzepatide is a little bit stronger based on clinical research, but they're GLP-1, and it's a form of peptide that works on metabolism, insulin resistance, and appetite. They're produced in the intestines, and they essentially give the feedback loop, I'm full. So because they work on the level of the GI by suppressing appetite and working to resensitize insulin, sometimes the side effects are associated to those things like GI distress, constipation, nausea, diarrhea, and stuff like that. Sometimes vomiting even. But essentially the way that they work, they're called incretins, which is a funny word, but they're hormones that really help us dictate how we utilize energy in the body. And energy in our body comes from calories from the food that we eat. So a lot of us who, or people who are obese, they basically have like a storage unit of energy in the form of fat. Fat's really great. It's 9 calories a gram compared to carbs and protein, which are 4. So 2.5 times the calories or energy. Think of calories as energy. We have this weird cultural anchor to the word diet being bad. It just means what you eat. Doesn't mean like a diet means I have to deprive, right? A diet is what you eat. What's your diet composed of? And the same goes for, in my opinion, things related to, I'm so sorry. I just like totally lost my train of thought. But when it comes to semaglutide and tirzepatide, the whole point, like I was saying before, is to drive appetite down and to utilize that stored fat. That's right, for the energy. So because it's 2.5 times richer, it's a richer deposit of energy stores for like a winter when we don't eat or something like that, back in like, evolutionary cavemen. So our body holds on to fat because it's such a precious high energy tissue. It offers so much more energy compared to anything else. So when our insulin resistance and the way that our body utilizes calories and energy is off, maybe because of, the reasons, I'm sure, but quick review is usually lifestyle, genetics, overeating lots of sugar for a long period of time, physiological issues like the pancreas where insulin's made, not working, and other conditions that are related to insulin like PCOS, metabolic syndrome, Cushing's disease, all these things. So whatever the reason is, something's happening in the body that's making you maintain more fat, store more fat, and increase that appetite. Is it stress? Is it seeking dopamine? Is it HPA access issue? Your hypothalamus pituitary adrenal, which is that relationship for, again, more stress stuff. But whatever that root cause is, whatever is clogging the sink, the good thing about semaglutide and tirzepatide is it's going to help retrain the body's ability to be sensitized to its own insulin, and then again drive appetite down, pardon me. So if you're used to eating 4,000, 5,000 calories a day for energy, and you only need 2, right? That extra 2 to 3 has to go somewhere. So by driving the appetite down, you're sticking more to your daily recommended allowance of calories, what your body actually needs, maybe even a calorie deficit. And at the same time, underneath the hood, like inside mechanically, your pancreas, your blood sugar, your insulin, all of these things are getting resensitized. And so it's going to work more efficiently, which is the great news. So that's why we're seeing like prediabetes and some low-level type 2 diabetes actually being reversed. So that's how those two peptides work. They're really fantastic. And that's in the metabolic family and insulin sensitization family of peptides, because you know how we have the different groups. So
But as far as plateauing, as far as a lot of people are losing, they lost 30 pounds, 35 pounds. Now they're plateauing. Should they increase their dose, increase their protein, increase what should they do at that point?
So I mean, it depends. Did you reach your goal? Are you at max dose? I have to consider variables, but if you're on a lower dose and you're not getting the results you want and you've reached a plateau, it could be time to increase your dose. Absolutely. Now, if you're at the max dose and you have lost 20% of your body weight, which is around what we see with something like semaglutide and tirzepatide, and it's been 3 or 4 months, you probably, that's either your set weight or there are other things at play, and it's not really about insulin anymore. It could be about other hormones, right? What's our age group? Are we perimenopausal? Are we menopausal? Because menopause affects weight changes, age affects weight changes, diet affects weight changes. So if you find yourself plateauing, on one hand, yes, we can increase the dosage. Yes, you can, work on the peptide side of things, but I challenge you to really educate clients and your consultants about the root cause, turning off the tap and removing the clog, which is the relationship to food in a lot of cases, the relationship to movement. Are they walking every day? Are the foods they eating actually nutrient deficient? Because yeah, you're eating less calories on semaglutide because your appetite's not as big, but 500 calories of French fries is not the same as 500 calories of fruits and vegetables. One is going to offer you actual nutrients, micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals to make our biochemistry work better, to make our factories work better, right? That's what it needs. Where the 500 calories in pro-inflammatory, like fast foods, packaged foods, sugary foods, things like that, that will keep us plateaued because we're nutrient deficient now. So we don't have what our factories need to do their job. We're taking a peptide to try and get it synthetically to do what we want. But if we don't give ourselves nutrition at the end of the day, our body's not going to do anything. It's just going to plateau across the board, not just with weight, but mood and, energy and aging and all that stuff. So if you're plateauing and you want to dig a little bit deeper, work on the relationship to food, work on more nutritionally dense foods, and play with your dosage, play with maybe taking a break for your body, get it resensitized, and then go back on a couple months later and see if at that same dose, now you're like reintegrating and kickstarting that pathway after having more energy and nutrients for 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Go back on slightly higher dosage and see if you're going to lose more weight from there. So in terms of the plateau, it's just so variable. You know what I mean? Like why people plateau, what's really going on. But if after 4 months, max dose, you've made all the lifestyle changes, you're working on your food, you're working on your diet, and you're still plateauing, and you're still considered obese, medically speaking, then I would look at other things, a little bit deeper dive, like hypothyroidism, polycystic ovarian syndrome, other issues that are going on biologically that could be hindering the semaglutide from doing its job.
How about metabolism? What role does your metabolism play, or how does your metabolism change, I should say, with significant weight loss? Could it just be that your metabolism has slowed down since you haven't eaten as much for a period of time? How do you reset your metabolism? Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I would love to. So metabolism is an umbrella statement for two processes happening simultaneously: anabolism and catabolism. So we're constantly breaking things down, like the food we eat, into nutrients, the turkey sandwich into amino acids. And then we're constantly doing the opposite, taking our building blocks and our beads and making jewelry. So as we break stuff down and we build stuff up, and we break stuff down and we build stuff up, and, you know, use our calories to make our stuff, that process that's happening in tandem, that whole thing is called metabolism. So if our body has to break food down, whole foods, into its building blocks, lipids, starches, sugars, amino acids, and stuff like that, right? Protein, carb, fat, from our diet to give us the ingredients to make what we need: serotonin, we need a fingernail, we need some skin cells, you know, we need insulin, whatever it is our body needs. The rate at which that's happening and the efficiency of that happening dictates your metabolic efficiency. So when that's happening really quickly, people have a high metabolism and they tend to be slightly underweight if they're not feeding that intake pathway, right? The breakdown, i.e. food. They're not eating enough calories. So what happens with weight loss, though, is when you don't feed that pathway as much, it's not going to be as efficient at breaking things down, which means it won't be as efficient as building things up. And so the process just becomes a little bit slower, right? And that's why people are like, I'm not eating as much, but my weight isn't moving. It's because we dictated and told our metabolism to slow down because it's trying to keep our body temperature, our hair intact, our heart pumping, our brain thinking, all of these real basic aspects of us surviving. It doesn't care about weight, fat distribution, body composition. It's not concerned about that. It's concerned about all of these other things. And so metabolism will slow down. And so you're not breaking stuff down or building stuff up as fast. So weight gain is easier. And the things that dictate, you know, the composers of those processes, like hormones, like peptides, if we're not giving ourselves the ingredients in the form of food, how can we make the stuff? If we don't have beads, how do we make jewelry? Mm-hmm. And so when we're on semaglutide, when we're on calorie restriction that's severe, like people who are on 500 calorie diets and stuff, and they lose all that weight, but it comes right back. It's because we have conditioned that metabolism to go slow. And when now all of a sudden we're like showering it with all of this energy, and now it's got all these building blocks, we think, well, this side is going to catch up and be as fast. And what ends up happening is the body's like, I don't want to go through that starvation from last time. I can't forget. So we're going to store you for later and utilize, you know, storing those excess calories instead of making stuff and the biological functions happening at a normalized rate. It's going to store a lot in the form of fat for like a rainy day. And a calorie deficit, semaglutide, all of these things can impact, because of the lack of calories we're taking in, it can definitely impact metabolism, but also so can aging and menopause and other hormones, because those all slow as we age as well. So it's, you know, it's not a one singular issue that's affecting metabolism, but I will say that that has a lot to do with why we see weight gain in perimenopausal and menopausal women, why we see rebound weight gain when people go off of semaglutide or off of severe calorie restricting, is because the metabolism has changed. You're actually like, you can turn it up and turn it down. And that's directly dictated to what you eat, how much you eat, and what you're putting in your body in the form of other substances, right? So that's metabolism.
Perfect.
I just love science. I'm so sorry if I'm getting off on these sciencey tangents, you guys.
Well, I love your stories, from the beads to everything else that you say. I absolutely love it. So just a quick takeaway. What can we do
if we've lost the weight, now we want to keep it off and we don't want to be on this medication for the rest of our life and we don't want to switch to another medication, what can we do today to maintain our metabolism, keep it, at pace, and then maintain the weight loss? Because we've worked so hard and we paid so much to lose it.
Absolutely.
But I don't want to get it back. So what can we do?
So it really, at its root cause, again, the clog of the sink, if you will, is your relationship to food. So if you really want, you've worked really hard, you've paid a lot of time and money and your resources into losing this weight, and now you want to keep it off, I would be realistic within myself and anticipate about 10% of weight gain, just naturally. So if you lost 60 pounds, you might gain 5 or 6 back. As your body's readjusting, that's pretty natural, well within the realm of reality, even up to 20%. So you might gain 10 or 12 back. But that's just because your metabolism's trying to find its footing now that it's functioning under a different environment. Because before it was functioning under a lower calorie, high peptide environment. And now there's no peptide and higher calorie. So it's kind of recalibrating. So in the process of that recalibrating, to prevent it from being all 60 pounds, gained back, really working on our relationship to food and creating that awareness, mindfulness when we're eating, listening to our body's hunger cues, because chances are we became obese or we put on all that excess weight because usually for a few reasons. If it's not genetic or medical, okay, I'm going to take that off the table for now because that's actually more rare. Most people, the reason why they gain weight is hedonistic or hedonic eating or emotional eating just for pleasure, eating to combat stress, eating to avoid feelings. Because, and we talked about this earlier too, is it's associated to infancy. When you cry, you get a bottle and a hug. So when we feel like crying as adults and there's no one around to hug us, what do? We eat and we try to get that comfort back. Also, when we're super stressed and overwhelmed with feelings, cortisol shoots through the roof, our stress hormone. And our body's natural response to that is to seek out dopamine. And food is a great, easily accessible, affordable way to produce lots of dopamine, which is your reward chemical, your feel-good chemical, your pleasure chemical, right? So why cry for 30 minutes when I can have a whole box of Oreos? And that's really the thing is this old coping skill that we developed in infancy and childhood and stuff never got replaced by something healthier, right? We use food as the crutch instead of exercise, journaling, seeing a therapist, overcoming those issues that we put in storage that we thought, our mind doesn't think about, but our body, our biochemistry remembers. And so working on removing the clog, turning the tap off, if you will, is really that relationship with food. How am I feeling right now? Why do I want to eat a whole pizza? Is that really going to solve my problem? And what can I do instead? Because cravings only last about 30 minutes. So if you can do something, take a walk, watch stand-up comedy to laugh, go hang out with a friend or family member, call someone you love, do a creative project, whatever, for about 30 minutes, it should subside for the most part. But also, I think people are so disacquainted, is that even a word? Not acquainted with themselves emotionally. They are so hyperfixated on, I have to be this thing. And I have to feel good all the time. And if I'm sad or angry or mad or depressed or confused or insecure, it's not okay. Push, and distract. Whatever that is, screens, food, drugs, alcohol, sex, all the things, right? So that to me is the biggest epidemic in healthcare that I've noticed practicing now for going on 11 years is at the root cause of any behavior people want to change that's leading to disease, like obesity, like aging, whatever it is, it's wanting to distract from who they actually are and being okay with that. It's okay to feel anger. It's okay to cry. We're taught how to brush our teeth and tie our shoes, but we're not really taught like, oh, honey, this is anger. This is frustration. Totally normal. These are some options to deal with it, right? We don't have that kind of guidance in a lot of cases. And so to me, for long-term weight loss, long-term health and longevity, lifestyle improvement, living to your highest quality, your highest potential, it really comes down to knowing yourself, respecting yourself, making good decisions, loving yourself as if you would love yourself like you love your children or your closest loved ones. You know, how do you nurture them? Give yourself a dose of that. And I can almost guarantee that's going to perpetuate those self-care things. It's going to make you want to get up and go exercise. It's going to make you want to make a smoothie instead of order a pizza, right? Because you're like, I'm worth it and it's okay. And sometimes you will have the pizza and the ice cream. Who cares? It's about balance, you know, self-awareness, balance, relationship to food, and also movement. Just get moving. Even if you could just walk 20 minutes a day. Those are all great ways to help with longevity of the weight loss.
Oh, I love that. That's a great note to end our conversation on. Thank you so much for those tips and recommendations. Yeah, you got to fix your relationship to food. And I think that's how we gained it. And that's how we keep it off ultimately.
Yes, absolutely.
I love that.
So well said. I love that.
Self-love, everyone. Self-love. And maybe we have to start a hugging circle. So if anyone wants, I can do it. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Leone. I can't wait to have you back. There's so many topics that we didn't even touch on. I sent you a list.
I'm so sorry. I just got
but I love it. Thank you so much for the recommendations. And guys, I think we have some products coming out soon.
That's exciting for you guys. I'm so excited for you. Sincerely. I love business growth, especially women-owned businesses and women helping other women. And it's just such a cool vibe.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, we can't wait to have you back, hopefully very soon. And you could tell us more about some of these peptides and talk to us a little bit more about the journey of weight loss. But thank you.
You're welcome, everyone. Thank you for showing up.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for showing up. Have a great rest of your day, evening, wherever you are. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks.